BACnet is an object-oriented model. It represents a BACnet system with a group of things. These things are called objects. Every object has a list of properties or attributes, what it is, how it can do things. And then services is just a fancy word for saying messages it can transfer between these things. Keep in mind that a device like a thermostat or a variable air volume controller is a group also of objects. There's always one special object for every device called a device object. The other objects, let's take a thermostat, for example, would have an analog input. The analog input is where you plug in this analog sensor that detects a resistance difference when the temperature changes, and that's what allows you to detect or to measure the temperature in that room. It might have a calendar object. And then every object will have properties again. So for example, the present value of the measured analog value would be called a present value. You might want to set a high limit. So if the temperature exceeds this value, then issue an alert. That would be a high limit. That's another property. And then finally, services, some examples of services that everyone has heard about. Who is, I am, read property, subscribe, change of value. These are all services that we can use to exchange messages between these groups of objects. So it is a real thing. Unfortunately, the tricks are some of the old school tips. Create a spreadsheet, maintain the spreadsheet, give by building a group of addresses so that you reduce the risk of overlap, or give vendors a group of addresses. Give this vendor every address that they use will start with this number. You can use tips like if it's an IP address, you can use a 4-digit addressing. If it's an MSTP address, use a 6-digit addressing with the chance of going to 7 or 5 if you have a lot of buildings. These are tips. They're not foolproof, but they do help manage your address scheme. There's other configuration mistakes like forgetting to change the threshold value on a change of value. There's not a lot of tricks other than walking through it. Of course, we at Optigo Networks are encouraging people to automate these checks by using products such as Optigo Visual Networks. It will be able to watch the traffic and help create dynamically a list of devices. That way you know what is used and what is not used any given time in your system, and they can use that to find the holes and assign that address, or be able to identify things like a change of value that's set incorrectly, particularly in things like when you're measuring airflow and you leave the threshold to 1. That means that anytime the change of value of a 1 CFM, 1 cubic feet meter, it triggers a lot of change. Manual configuration mistakes are common. You do have to develop techniques and process to reduce them, and spreadsheets, manual checks, and of course combining that with some automation using software like Optigo Visual Networks. Barring systems that have serious changes or performance issues, in my opinion, if you check twice and it doesn't respond twice in a row, that's sufficient. I mean, it's very rare that a system would not reply the first time, and now if you give it a second time, it absolutely should be. Now, obviously, there's always nuances in these answers. There's serious bottlenecks in BACnet systems, right? Particularly when there's MSTP devices involved, BBMDs involved. These BACnet routers and BBMDs create natural bottlenecks. As we have talked about many times, BACnet is a very chatty protocol. It has a lot of broadcasts. When not maintained, the broadcast goes through everything, which also goes through these routers and BBMDs. So when you are sending out a ping, check status across these routers, these BBMDs, and it doesn't reply twice in a row in a system that is busy, that's dangerous. BACnet MSTP, you might want to extend that a little bit, especially in systems that you do know has some performance issues. BACnet sucks. I hear that all the time. Or do you agree BACnet is good or bad? Do you think BACnet is good or bad? It's a fantastic question, actually. Let me give you my first answer. BACnet is not bad. The standard is very well written, it's very rich. The problem is that the BACnet standard allows a lot to be done. And there's a saying often when we joke around us, when we are around the BACnet standard committee table, we say, because it can doesn't mean you should. We have to put in context. If you think about the context of business, BACnet really allowed this interoperability, this openness between vendors, and really extended the growth and allowed this proliferation of building automation connected devices. I would say that one of the big weaknesses of BACnet would be on the security side. And of course, the community has addressed that with BACnet SC. But again, the protocol itself is very, very good. It's the way it's applied. Don't do a discover all on a system, a large system. When you press that discover button on your supervisor, on your Yabe or whatever controller, don't do a discover from 0 to 4194302. Hopefully that gives you some context. I think BACnet is an excellent protocol. We do have to put some rules around it. As a community, we should continue to advance the tools, the rules, the standard, so that we can make it better. But again, the protocol is very good. It's the way we apply it. We need to learn to use it better. Ronnie at ABK, thank you so much for the summer wishes and the great question. The question was, in short, is a BACnet SC hub fairly equivalent to the BBMD, to a BBMD, and therefore does it become a bottleneck, just like how a BBMD becomes a bottleneck for BACnet broadcast messages? The short answer is yes. In fact, it is worse, because BACnet BBMD only routes or forwards BACnet broadcast messages. However, in the BACnet SC context, both broadcast and unicast encrypted messages would go through the hub. There is one exception. BACnet SC does allow direct device-to-device communication. It is, again, an extra step to configure, and therefore, without the configuration, all traffic, all BACnet SC traffic would go through a single hub. We are doing this series of short videos to answer any questions you may have. If you have questions around BACnet systems, how BACnet works on OT networks, how IT and OT works in combination, I would consider us the experts when it comes to that cross-section of technology. Send in your questions and we'll get to it. Thank you.